So in this video today, I want us to talk about paper size, margin, and bleed. This is very important when you're dealing with Amazon KDP. Why do I say this? I say this because most people actually face problems of paper size, margin, and bleed while uploading books on Amazon KDP. And one of the reasons why I know that is because I see most people receiving this kind of email, this kind of message. Yes. Now, if you receive this kind of message, usually comes when people are trying to publish books with bleed. It comes when people are trying to publish books with bleed. Now, I want to clarify a way to prevent yourself from going through this hassle. Yes, from going through this margin hassle and bleed hassle. Now, how do you prevent this kind of problem from occurring in the first place? Now, the only way to prevent this kind of problems from occurring in the first place is to make sure that your paper size, bleed, and margin are correctly measured before you actually publish your book. Now that happens at the beginning when you're setting your paper size inside Microsoft Word document. Yes, so I'm going to be dealing with Microsoft Word document only in this particular part of the video. Now, to begin with, let's say we want to start with the Microsoft Word document. Now, to start with the Microsoft Word document, you come and you open the Microsoft Word document. Now, what you're seeing here are three sets of figures inside this Microsoft Word document. I am going to be dealing with paper size of 5.5 by 8.5, 8.5 by 11, and 6 by 9. Yes, 6 by 9. So those are the common paper sizes that I use. So let me repeat them again. 5.5 by 8.5. That is the first paper size that most of us actually use. Yes, this is the normal size. This is the normal size without bleed. Yes, this is the size without bleed. Now the other size without bleed is 6 by 9. This is also without bleed. I will not be talking about things without bleed any further because these ones have no problem. People already know how to use these ones. And then there is 8.5 by 11. Yes, by 11. So these are the common paper sizes that I usually use. Yes, these are the common paper sizes that I use, and I think most of you actually use. Now those are the paper sizes without bleed. Without bleed, there's no problem. I'm sure most of you know how to use them without bleed. But with bleed, if it comes to when it is with bleed, then there are certain things you have, certain figures you have to add to these specific numbers. Now I'm not going to show you what you're going to add, but I'm going to show you the final result of what comes up when those figures are already added. Now, according to Amazon, these are the exact figures that come up, the exact paper size which comes up when you've added that figure to the paper size. These are the total of what you come up with when you've added those figures. Now 5.5 by 8.5 becomes this particular figure up here. Yes, so this particular figure becomes a total of 5.5 by 8.5. Yes, so all you have to do is just copy this particular figure and paste it and set it up inside Microsoft Word document. Now these figures are in inches. Yes, they're in inches. Mark that. Most people ignore units, they ignore the measurement units, and then they end up facing problems. If here is showing in inches, you go ahead and start measuring yours in centimeters or millimeters. That is one of the first things that causes problems. So keep the units intact. If you get your units in inches, keep everything in inches. If your Microsoft Word document is set in millimeters, keep everything in millimeters. If it is set in centimeters, keep everything in centimeters. Now this one is kept in inches. If it is in inches, then we are going to use inches throughout the book. Yes, so the first, this is what 5.5 by 8.5 becomes. It becomes 5.625 by 8.75. yes, it becomes this particular figure. Now what I want to tell you is that with this figure, this is the exact figure you're supposed to add to the add to Microsoft Word document. So now, as you can see, we are going to try and adjust this particular paper size to fit our bleeded paper size. Now 8.5 by 11 becomes this particular paper size with bleed. Now if 6 by 9 has bleed, it becomes this particular paper size. So you can see that these are the three paper sizes. These are the total of what the paper size becomes when it has bleed. When it has bleed, it automatically becomes this. And what do I mean by bleed? Before I go further, let me first explain to you what bleed means. So what is bleed? Yes, so I'll not define it, I'll just show you an example of what bleed actually means. And let me say I have an image here. Let's say I have an image. Let's say I have an image. Let me insert an image and show you what bleed actually means. Now bleed. So bleed, let me just insert an image. Let me insert any random image and see what we can do. Let me insert this one. So I'll insert this AI image. Now I'll just use this image to show you what bleed actually means. Now if you look at this paper, you're going to see that this particular paper, let me first reduce it. Now if you look at this particular paper, you're going to see that this paper, if I put this image, let me make the image movable. So the image is now movable. Now if I have this image here, this particular image, and I put it here in the middle. Now bleed, bleed means if you put an image like this is no bleed. Yes, this image is no bleed. Why? Because the image has not passed the margin. Yes, has not gone past the margin. Then this is no bleed. If the image is intact, it is within the margin, then it is automatically no bleed. Yes. Now in order for me to say that this image is bleed, it has to go past the margin. How? Let me show you. So if the image goes like this past the margin, and then it also goes like this, then this image is referred to as bleed. Yes, it is bleed because when Amazon is printing, they're going to cut out some parts. Yes, they're going to cut out some small parts of the image. When they're cutting this book, when they're trimming this book, they're going to cut out some part of the image around the edges here. Some parts around the edges here are going to be cut, and that's why it is called bleed. This part is bleeding. This part of the book is bleeding. It's being bled. That is what we call bleed. Yes. So the bleed means that the image has gone past the margin. If this is the margin, if these are the margins, and the image has already gone past the margin, this is bleed. Yes. This is referred to as bleed. But if the image does not go past the margin, then it is no bleed. It is no bleed. Doesn't apply as bleed. Yes. So in order for an image to be bleed, it has to first go past the margin. Now let me show you this. So if I have this image, so now sometimes it doesn't matter how many parts of the margin it goes through, it is bleed, whether bleed. If you can see like this, if this, you see this image has still gone past the margin, but on one side, this side is no bleed, but this side is bleed. This makes the whole book bleed. As long as an image has gone past the margin, doesn't matter how many sides it has taken, as long as a small part of it has gone past the margin, then it is bleed. For this particular image, what is making it bleed is this other part here, because it has gone past the margin. It has gone past the margin. This becomes bleed. Yes. So bleed means an image has gone past the margin. Now what you cannot do is that you cannot make any text go past the margin. It doesn't matter whether it is bleed or no bleed. No text should go past the margin. If the text goes past the margin, your book will not be accepted. Let me say text cannot go past the margin. It's only images and shapes that can go past this margin. Text cannot go past the margin. Text should remain within the margin. Yes, text should remain within the margin. Don't make any text go past the margin. Yes. So this is what we are meaning by bleed or no bleed. Yes, bleed or no bleed. No bleed means everything, whether text or image, are within the margin, within this margin here. Within this margin here, everything is within this margin here, and if anything goes past this margin or this margin or even this margin, then it becomes bleed. If an image specifically goes past this, it becomes bleed. So I hope you have understood what it means by bleed or no bleed. Now without further ado, let's continue with our measurement. So I want to show you how to measure 5.5 by 8.5 with bleed. Now if it is 5.5 by 8.5 with bleed, the total figure changes to this one. Yes, it is no longer 5.5 by 8.5. It changes to this one. Why? Because when it is bleed, there's a certain small percentage which Amazon cuts off from your book, from your paper size. Yes, it's a very tiny percentage which Amazon cuts off from your paper size. So you have to measure and account for that part which Amazon is going to cut off, and that's why 5.5 by 8.5 becomes this particular figure. Now I picked this figure from Amazon, so I'm going to just insert it, and you see exactly how it works. Now to change this paper size, we are going to go ahead and copy this particular figure. Yes, so we are going to start from here. So you copy the width. This is the width and the height. This is the width and the height. So I'll copy the width, click and copy. It's already on my clipboard. So from here, all I have to do is go up here and look for layout. Here, that part which says layout, click on it. After clicking on layout, you go ahead and look for size, which is here. Click on size. Now on size, you could just pick what is here, but no, the default, we don't want to use the default because we want to measure, we want to put our own size. So that means we are going to go down here to what we call more paper sizes. Click on more paper sizes and it will bring you to this one, and make sure you're on paper. This part we say is paper. Now remember, this figure we have copied, this particular figure is the width. You can see that the width is here. The word width is here. Now from where there's width, you go ahead and highlight this and change it and paste the number that we copied. You can see that is 5.625. It's 5.625. We have pasted it here. Then you go ahead. Actually, before you actually click OK, you first paste this number here. Then you come down here and see if it is on whole document. Make sure this is on whole document. Then you click on OK, which is here. Click on OK. You wait and see there's going to be changes. This paper size is going to change. So I click OK. You can see what has happened. So this particular size has changed. This part has changed to that particular measurement. This part has changed to that measurement. Yes. Now we are going to change the height. You can see that the height is too long. So the height is too long. Now we have to change the height. And how do you change the height? The same the same process applies. So you come here and copy this 8.75, which is the height. Copy it. Come to layout. Then click on size. Come here to more paper size. Click on this. And then look for this part which says height. You make sure you're under paper. In here, under paper, you look for height. Now from here, you highlight this and paste this height, 8.75. After pasting the height, you make sure this is on whole document. Then you click on OK. You can see the changes that have happened. Now this particular paper size is 5.5 by 8.5 with bleed. Now this is the paper size with bleed. If you start publishing your book, Amazon will never disturb you after you publish this book unless you make a mistake. Now within this, your image can now go past the bleed successfully. Yes, your image can go past the bleed and you will not suffer any consequence from Amazon. Yes, you will not suffer anything. They will not punish you for anything. They will not give you any penalty for publishing your book. Yes, so as I've explained what bleed and no bleed means, you saw earlier what bleed and no bleed actually means. Let me repeat it again. You can see as this image is sitting here, this is no bleed. Because why? Because it has not gone past the margin. If the image goes past the margin, then it becomes bleed. And bleed only applies to images. It applies, you mark this one. This is very important. I need to mark it. Bleed only applies to images. Texts cannot go past the margin. Yes, text cannot go past the margin. Whether it is in a book which is bleed or no bleed, text cannot go past the margin. Do not make them go past the margin. Yes, so if your book is bleed, make sure you still keep the text within the margin. Now shapes can also be bleed. Yes, shapes and images can be bleed because they are all cut out of the same cloth. They are similar. Yes, so what I'm telling you is that text cannot go past the margin, whether it is a book which is bleed or no bleed. Just make sure that images are the only ones which can go past the margin because they can be cut. So that is what I wanted to tell you. So this is the paper size of 5.5 by 8.5 with bleed. Yes, 5.5 by 8.5 with bleed. This is the paper size you're supposed to measure. This is the exact thing I wanted to show you for 5.5 by 8.5. Now let's go to 6 by 9. What do I mean 6 by 9? Let's say 6 by 9. This is also a common paper size, 6 by 9. Now most people use this 6 by 9 to write maybe novels, to write non-fiction books, travel guides. So 6 by 9. Now without bleed, it is normal. You just write 6 by 9. You write 6 by 9 and it will work for you. But with bleed, then if it is with bleed, then you have to add certain figures to it, which is already added here. I got this figure also from Amazon directly. So that means it is absolutely correct. Now what do you if you're having bleed, if you're having a page with bleed for Amazon KDP and you want to use 6:9 paper size, you want to use this 6:9 paper size, and this is the measurement you have to consider. And how do you do it? Same process. So you come here and you copy this. This is the width. You copy it, copy, and come to layout, come to size, and then come to more paper size. Click here. Then you come to paper. You make sure you're on paper here. Then you highlight this width and change it, paste this. You can see that it has been changed. Then make sure you're on whole document and click OK. You can see what has happened. One side of the book has changed. This is the side which has changed. Yes, since this side has changed, now we want to change this height. Yes, we want to change the height. Now to change the height, same story. Just come back here to 9.25. You come back to 9.25. You copy it. You're going to copy. I remember these measurements are in inches, so you copy this in inches. Come to layout, come to size, click on more paper size. Then under paper, you come to height here, highlight this and paste. You can see that. Make sure this whole document is highlighted. Then this thing which says whole document is highlighted. And you click on OK. You can see that there was a change, and now we have a complete 6:9 paper size with bleed. Yes, with bleed. With bleed. Why do I say with bleed? I've already explained to you why it is with bleed. Now, this is the paper size you're going to use when it is with bleed. This is the total of what you're going to put inside your Microsoft Word document. So this is 6:9 with bleed paper size. And now let's go to the last paper size, which is 8.5:11. So 8.5:11. This is a paper size that most people use for cookbooks. Yes, for cookbooks. Why do they like this paper size? Because this paper size gives more room for creativity. It is large. It is a large paper size. That's why most people like it. I myself, I like this paper size because it gives a lot of space for creativity. It lets you design your book the way you desire. Now, what do I want to do with this paper size? Now, to measure this paper size, you follow the same exact process that we just used. You come to 8.5. You come to this paper size. This is the total when it has bleed. When it has bleed, you come here and you copy 8.6 something. You copy this. Then you go to layout, same thing. You click on size. Yes, then you go to more paper size. Then you make sure you're on paper. Then you highlight this and change the width. As you can see, this part saying width, so you change that width. You make sure you're on whole document. Then you click on OK. You can see this particular size, the width has changed. This is what we are referring to as width, and it has changed to 8.625. Yes, so 8.5:11. Now we go ahead and change the height, which is this 11.25. Now that 25 is the amount that Amazon is going to cut from your book when you published it. So you copy this, you come to size, paper size, you come to more paper size, click here, then come to height, which is here, highlight this and paste this, paste that, then make sure you're on whole document and then click OK. Now you can see this is the paper size that we are looking for. It is 8.5:11 with bleed. Yes, with bleed. Now that is all about bleed. That's all about paper size with bleed. Now if at any point you want to write a book with bleed, a book with bleed means a book in which the images have gone past the margin. Images have gone past the margin. Mark my word, I said images or shapes have gone past the margin, not texts. Text do not go past the margin. Doesn't matter what kind of book you're writing. Make sure your text does not go past the margin. If your text go past the margin, your book is going to be rejected ×2. Yes, so that's it. Now let's go here. Let's go here and talk about the margin. Yes, so since we have been talking about bleed, we've talked about paper size. Now let's talk about margin. What is margin? Margin is just this side of the book. This side of the book is what we are referring to as margin. So this is this area here and this area here plus up here, and this other part here is what we are referring to as margin. These are the areas we are referring to as margins. Yes, so those are the margin. Now margin, when it comes to margin, the margin of a book differs according to the number of pages. Yes, the margin differs according to the number of pages. What do I mean by that? I mean, when I say the number of the margin differs according to the number of pages. I mean according to the number of pages. For example, now these measurements are from Amazon directly. Now from 24 to 150 pages, they have different book margins. And now let me tell you something about these figures you see here. Now these three figures, 1, 2, and 3. These three figures are not it's not a must to actually use these exact figures. Yes, so these figures show the minimum amount of space you can use for your margin. The minimum amount. What do I mean by minimum? Minimum means the smallest, because this means the smallest amount, because even if you look at it here, you're going to see that they're using the words like at least. At least means it is the least, it is the smallest that you can use. If something is the smallest that you can use, that means there's a bigger one you can use. You are not limited to that small one. It's the smallest. If there's a smallest, then there must be a biggest. There must be a big one. So that means if someone says at least doesn't tie you to that specific number. It gives you a range. It gives you a bigger chance. Yes. So now we are saying here at least. Now there's what we call the outside margin, and then there's what we call the inside margin. Now the inside margin is sometimes referred to as gutter. Inside margin is sometimes referred to as gutter. Yes. So now let me say from 24 to 150 pages. 150 pages. Now what I'm going to show you here is the measurement with bleed. I don't care about the one without bleed, because I know you know it, you can do it. Those ones, the default margins of Microsoft Word can work for you on those ones. Now what I'm going to show you here is the one with bleed, and this one here, outside margin with bleed. Yes, so the inside margin is the same for whether there is bleed or no bleed, but the outside margin is the one which changes. So inside margin is this side and outside margin is this side. Yes, according to the book, when your book is like this, so outside margin is this side and inside margin is this side. Now in most cases you find that the inside margin is bigger than the outside margin. Why? Because most books fold. When a book is being folded, it folds on the inside margin. It is folded on the inside margin. That's why in most cases we find that the inside margin is bigger than the outside margin. Now the outside margin for bleed is constant. It's a constant. It's 0.375. It doesn't matter what pages you have. It's a constant. It's 0.375. Now this 0.375 is not the final number. You can use anything above 0.35, because 0.375, anything above 0.375 can work. That means you can round it off to 0.375 becomes 38. So I can have 0.38. This will still work. If I have 0.39, this can still work. If I have 0.4, this will still work. If I have 0.5, this will still work. So at least means this is the least, this is the smallest you can use, but you can also use anything above 0.375. Anything above 0.375 can be used. That's for the outside margin. Outside margin, this side is a constant for bleed. A book with bleed, it is constant. It's 0.375. That is the outside margin. Now the inside margin is the one which changes. I've explained why the inside margin changes. The inside margin changes because your book has to be folded on the inside margin. When you're folding your book, you fold it on the inside margin, what you call the gutter. You fold it on the gutter. That's why the inside margin has to change, has to be bigger to accommodate that space. Now for a book of 24 to 150 pages, the inside margin is 0.375. The inside margin is the same as the outside margin. They are the same. Yes, they are the same sizes. Yes. Now for a book of 150 pages to 300 pages, the inside margin is 0.5. Is 0.5. That means this inside margin is going to be 0.5. Yes. So this side of the page is going to be 0.5, and then this side of the page is going to be 0.38. As you can see, I've rounded off to 38. So this part is going to be 0.38 and this part is going to be 0.5. But you can also use 0.5 here and use 0.5 here. You cannot be penalized because as we said, 0.38 is the least that Amazon allows you to use. That means you can use something more than 0.35 as long as it's not below 0.338. It is allowed for you to use it. So me, what I always do is that I make sure they are balanced. I balance the thing. If I've decided to use 0.38, if I let the inside margin to determine my outside margin. If I'm using 0.38 this side, then this side I'll also use 0.38. I'll just balance them, 0.38. If I'm using 0.5 this side, even this side I'll use 0.5. These are not big numbers. 0.5 is very small, it's not a big figure. Now if I'm using 0.6 this side, then I'll make sure that even this side I use 0.6 so that I don't struggle. So I make sure they're equal. That is what I do. But according to Amazon, you are supposed to, that also works. But according to Amazon, you're supposed to follow these things. Yes, follow these things, but it's not a must as long as your numbers, your figures are not below the minimum. These are the minimum numbers. Yes. So if I have if I have a book of 151 to 300 pages, then my inside margin is going to be 0.5. Yes, it's going to be 0.5. And the outside margin is a constant, it's 0.38. So the outside margin is going to be here. The outside margin is going to be 0.38 and the inside margin is going to be 0.5. And then I'll have my margin that way. I have my margin set that way. Now let me show you this practically. Now, as I've said, I always balance them. I make sure I let the inside margin to determine my outside margin. If my inside margin is 0.5, I make sure the outside margin is also 0.5. Why? Because what the figures that Amazon are showing here is just a constant. It's just the least they can do, the least amount, the least figure you can use, but it doesn't tie you to that specific figure. Now, let me show you how you can determine your margins. Now, if to determine your margin, you come to layout, come this part which says layout, then you click on this thing which says margins, and then you're going to see too many margins here. Now these margins are being measured in inches. They're being measured in inches. Yes, they're in inches. Now it doesn't matter which paper size you're using, margins are the same for all paper sizes. You should listen to that. This is another point to note. Margins are the same for all paper sizes. It's the number of pages that determines the margin, not the paper size. So now if you come this side, now these are pre-made margins which Amazon or which Microsoft Word has already made for you. Now this is one of the thing which makes Microsoft Word document very good for book writing, because you don't need to now struggle to start measuring these particular these measurements, because they have already made them for you here. Now remember, these are just the list and figures, the list figures, they're not the exact figures you're supposed to use. Now let's say you're writing a book of 24 to 150 pages. Yes, if your book is 24 to 150 pages, then there are certain measurements you can choose. For example, number one, you can choose this normal. This normal can work for you. Why? Because this normal is 1 by 1. It's 1 by 1. You can see 1 by 1. 1 by 1. 1 is bigger than 0.375, and 1 is also bigger than 0.375 on this side. 1 is bigger than both of them. So that means you can use this normal. You can use this normal. Now the next one is called narrow, and if you look at this narrow, you're going to see that it's at 0.5. Even this side is 0.5. So 0.5 is also bigger than 0.375. So that means you can actually use this narrow also. Now there's the third one called moderate. Moderate is 0.75. Yes, even this side is 0.75. 0.75 is bigger than 0.375. That means you can also use moderate. Yes. Then there's this one called wide. Wide is 2 by 2. 2 is bigger than 0. Is double, is more than these measurements by majority. That means you can also still use it. And there's this one called mirrored. Mirrored is 1.25 by 1. Mirrored is 1.5 by 1. That means you can also use it. Yes, because it is bigger than the minimum. It's bigger than our minimum. Then there's this one, Office 2003 default. It's 1.25 by 1.25. You can also use it because it is bigger than the minimum. Yes. So if I were you, if you have a book of 24 pages to 150 pages, then you don't need to struggle to start looking for Amazon measurements. You can pick any of these normal measurements of Amazon and it will work for you. Yes, and it will work for you. If your book is between 24 pages, between 24 pages to 150 pages, you can pick any of these margins and it will work for you. So you don't need to start measuring. You can decide to also measure this exact one, but I'm telling you, the margins that this book Microsoft Word has already is enough and good for you to use. So that is for a book of 24 to 150 pages. Now, what if your book is 151 to 300 pages? Yes, 151 to 300 pages. Then which one can you use from the default ones? Yes, which one can you use from the default ones? I don't want you to start measuring. I just want you to use the default ones. So from default, we can see that we need 0.5 inches by at least 0.375. That means this 0.5 inches is the one which is determining what you're going to use. So anything you choose should be at least 0.5 inches and above. Now from here we can see that this first one, last custom setting, is 0. something something. Yes, this is the last custom setting. Now from here we can see that normal is 1 by 1. The measurement for normal is 1 by 1. If it is 1 by 1, 1 by 1 is bigger than 0.5. That means you can use this normal. It is allowed, you can use it. Yes, so you tick this, you mark. If your book is between 151 pages to 300 pages, then you can use normal. That is the first one. Second one is narrow, because narrow is at 0.5 by 0.5. 0.5 is the least we can use. 0.5 by 0.5 we can use. That means you can just click on this narrow and use it. Then let's look at moderate. You can also use moderate because it's at 0.75. 0.75 is bigger than 0.5. That means you can use this moderate. Yes. Then let's look at this one, wide. Wide is 2 by 2. 2 by 2 is bigger than 0.5. That means you can also use wide. Then let's look at this mirrored. Mirrored is 1.25 by 1. 1.25 is bigger than 0.5. That means you can also use it. You can see that you can use all of them even here. For a book paper size of 151 to 300 pages, you can still use all of them here. The next one we're going to see is a book of 301 pages to 500 pages. Most people write these kind of books are crazy people. Yeah. this paper size is too big for you to write, but you can still write it. There are people who can still write it. So if in any case your book reaches this, then you make sure your gutter is 0.625. 0.625 starts from 0.625. That means it can also be 0.1. It can be 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 and above. Anything above. So out of the default margin, is there anything above 0.6? Is there anything above 0.6? You look through, you can see the first one doesn't match. The second one is bigger than 0.6. 1 is bigger than 0.6. You can use normal. So you can use this normal. This normal can be used because it is 1 by 1. Then narrow is 0.5. 0.5 is lower than 0.6. So you cannot use narrow. Narrow is out. Then moderate is 0.75. 0.75 is bigger than 0.6. That means you can use this moderate. Then wide is 2 by 2. 2 by 2 is bigger than 0.6. That means you can use this. Then you can also use this and you can use this. So the only thing you cannot use is narrow here. You cannot use narrow. Paper size measurement for blue books with bleed. If you follow the exact things that I've showed you in this video, you will never suffer when it comes to bleed or no bleed. You can no longer get that kind of message that Amazon always sends you for problems. Yes, so you'll never go through this kind of message again in your lifetime if you follow the exact things I've taught in this particular video. Now I think this video is long enough. I would like to stop here. In my next video I'll be showing you other things. If you're new to this channel, make sure you hit this subscribe button so that you don't miss what I'm going to show you in the next video.